Alright, here we go. Last video. When trying to compile the book, the one thing that I had to do was figure out how to end it. And Sarah's story, that story, seemed like it could be the ending. And I mean, in some ways, maybe that's kind of what I was okay with. And that was the idea that all these people who mattered so much to me in high school came back for me. And that's not a bad story to tell for a kid who, thought of himself as a lovable loser and maybe had to bribe people to hang out with him. That nice voice in the back of my head. But then I thought, there's gotta be something else. And I decided that the part that I should write about was a mini story unto itself. And that is why, what, how did I decide to write this in the first place? Then I also thought, after 400 pages and now 30 videos of these adventures, maybe, just maybe, someone out there's going, okay, but what are they up to now? And maybe there's a story to that too. So I give you what I have lovingly called the Coda. The how we got here and the where are we now. And I titled it Time Stands Still. During spring break 2022, my parents asked my wife and I to come over to help clean out a storage shed that they had in their backyard. It was falling apart, and they planned to have it torn down and removed. And with a batch of dumpsters being dropped off for the neighborhood and cleanup project, now was the time. My wife and I went over, and while our kids played with their Nana and Bappa, we pulled out container after container of stuff. I thought it was going to be our stuff. It was a lot of mine. I found action figures and pogs and trading cards. It was container after container after container of nerd stuff that I'd forgotten about over the years. Whether it was from our apartment before we bought our house, or when I moved out of my parents' house just shy of 18 years before. When I opened another blue container, I expected more toys. Instead, staring back at me, were blue accordion files, and I knew exactly what it was. My zombie writing from high school. I didn't have a lot of time, but I flipped through it knowing I'd have to return to it, read through it in earnest. As I pulled out the files, there were other things. A smaller box. And a box in there, too. And staring back at me, some in plastic page protectors and some not, were letters and notes from Meg, Emily, Adrian, and Tanny. Birthday cards, Christmas cards, yearbooks, and journals. I found a couple small cassette tapes, my vocal journals. And in another box, pictures. Not all of them that I remembered having, and I'm still looking. But a shit ton of photos. It was all 4 years of high school, those friends and the family I met, the memories, and of course the angst. I took the entire bin home with me and began going through it. I found the signs that Becky made to ask me to prom. I found a choir folder and receipts from my and Meg's prom pictures. I found the notebook Emily and I passed along to each other in the hall or during classes, and the blueprint of the coffee room, and with all of it came memories. Memories of these people and experiences. Sitting at my dining room table, yes, root beer in hand, I pulled out one handful of letters and noticed they all shared the same person. Adrian. I laid them out on the table and snapped a photo, sending it to her over Facebook Messenger. I hadn't talked to her in years, but I had to share it. And then I found a card from Pam, took a photo and sent it. And Diana. Adrian and I started talking again, messaging each other and catching up. Diana and I did too. We'd stayed in constant contact, maybe every few weeks or so, saying hi online. But then I found more, and more, and more. And so I messaged who came with it. Emily, Meg, Corey. I told Xandar and Blaine and Tammy what I found, sharing photos where I could. You need to be writing all this down, was what Diana told me. And in a separate conversation, Adrian said the same thing. So I sat down with an empty notebook and an empty computer screen in front of me, much like I had done multiple times over the years, and I began writing. I first wrote down quick, just one-sentence notes to myself, memories, triggers, all that kind of thing, all the while poring over my journals and groaning at some of the things I wrote and worried about at the age of 15. I bought a mini cassette player off eBay, and I listened to 16 and 17-year-old me and his friends talking. While this was happening, one day at work, I was sitting at my desk, and I playing my Spotify playlist, and a song played that I had heard dozens of times before, but now it hit a bit different. Putting earphones in at my lunch, I listened over and over to it while going through scans of photos. The music gods had provided a soundtrack. That song was Mike Massey's cover of Rush's Time Stands Still. If I was going to write something, the last thing I wanted it to be was exploitive. I wanted to write the one thing about these people that was always there, no matter the distance or what that pesky time bastard did. That was love. I set off to write a piece about each specific person. And since I found Adrian's stuff first, I wrote her draft first. And then Jessica's. And I sent it to each one of them. And it did what I wanted it to do. Showed them how much I love them. Then, and still now. You have to write this, but you have to write about you, too, Diana told me. I didn't want to write about myself. That part just seemed so ego-driven. A teenage high school memoir about some nerdy kid in Arizona? Who would be interested in that? But then I remembered something. And that's time is not always kind. Sometimes you lose things or people or accidents happen and take what means the world from you, and that someday these stories may not be easily remembered. Or worse, the people. That voice, that 17-year-old me. He was back in that room, sitting at his window, with his feet on the windowsill, music on, and spotlighted by that one damn lamppost. Get to writing, he called out. And 37-year-old me answered. Summer's going fast. Nights growing colder. Children growing up. Old friends growing older. Freeze this moment a little bit longer. Make each sensation a little bit stronger. Time Stands Still by Rush. Friends. So, my initial thought while writing this and talking with people who have been invaluable while doing so was that the idea that there's still a bit of stories to tell way into my college years and beyond, and I don't know if I will yet. Maybe in a podcast, maybe I've been jotting some down already, and I'll work up on a follow-up to this. Maybe I'll entitle it something like Nerds with Experiences someday. But regardless, one of the things I did want and did think I needed to do was to touch on some of the people in this book and where they and I have left off over the years. Some I've been lucky enough to see once in a while. Corey, Kate, Kelsey. I've had the opportunity to see them once, twice, a couple of times, run into them over the years. But then there are a few, like Aaron, or Kelly, or Jessica, or Jeremy, who I haven't. We didn't get the chance to hang out after high school as much. And let's be clear, I would still hang out with them in a heartbeat. However, my hope is that while reading or listening to this, maybe you've gotten to start having a little bit of affection for them as well. Because let's be clear, all of these people are pretty fucking cool. So, fire up the song Friends by Joe Satriani. It's instrumental. You can listen while you read. Let's have a bit of a catch-up. Adrian. A bit fitting that someone so important to my final year of covering high school would be the first person I get to talk about here. Adrian and I stayed in contact for about a year and a half, 2 years after high school. We would email and call for quite some time, and she was always someone I thought of with a whole lot of love. And then, well, life happened. And I was an idiot and a jerk. Shortly after Sarah's accident, Adrian was in a car accident as well. And when I called to check on her shortly after, we got into a conversation that turned into an argument. We were both coming at things from different mindsets, but in the end, the best I can say is it was a disagreement. The worst I can say is that I failed her as a friend in that moment and was an idiot. And we stopped talking. Letters, emails, instant messengers, phone calls. All stopped. Years later, we did follow each other on social media, and then occasionally there was a like of a picture, or maybe a quick post of, "Happy birthday," but other than that, we pretty much drifted apart for nearly 15 years. Until I found the boxes. And hers were the first letter I found in the pile, and I set them aside. I read through them at a glance at first, but also knew I couldn't just keep them to myself. So I shot a photo of them and sent her a message on Facebook and told her what I found and figured that was it. A quick jump back in time with a smile and a well-wishing. Instead, we spent time catching up. At the time of this writing, we pretty much message each other every day. Even if it's just to say hi. We video chatted to catch up, and to see each other in real time. She dug out prom photos I'd never seen before. We talk about Doctor Who and our kids and nerd stuff. She's a minister, and I watch her sermons when they're uploaded on YouTube. As encouraging me writing this out, she was the voice that pushed me in that direction, so I did it. I wasn't sure how this project was going to turn out in the beginning, so I wrote just the chapters of people, and she was the first one I did. And when I started writing mini chapter by mini chapter, uncovering photos, I would share some of them with her. And she read them as they came. She's been there for this project since pretty much day one. We confronted the elephant in the room and talked about those dark times and how we got there and how we were perfectly fine moving past it. We were also very clear about one thing, the most important thing. We may not have talked, but we never stopped loving each other. During a family road trip in 2023, we had to pass through a town that was only 10 minutes away from her. And we met for coffee. She introduced me to her daughters, introduced her to mine and my wife. She still has the guardian angel. And she's never, ever stopped being the go. Ashley. Ashley and I continued to stay in contact after high school and after Sarah's death for years. She called me the father of her future children, and she was my scream queen. When the movie Freddy vs. Jason came out, we all went as a group, me dressed as Jason and her in an admittedly sexy Freddy getup. We sat next to each other, a friendly bet between us, and we cheered during the entire movie. When it was over, we knew how much seeing the movie together meant to us. Over time, she developed problems in her lungs. She was hospitalized in San Francisco. In 2005, we came very close to losing her. An emergency lung transplant saved her, and we spent even more time together afterward. She wanted to go with me on a couple of cruises, which sadly we always missed out on due to timing. We flirted, may or may not have made out a couple of times, and would call each other to talk, hang out to watch horror movies, and if we ever needed the other, we were a phone call away and would be there in an instant. We, without question or pause, loved the hell out of each other. In late October 2013, though, battling pneumonia, her lungs would fail. I would visit Ashley on November 8th, 2013 while she was in the hospital. While she wasn't awake, her mother Wendy, Putman, and I all went in to sit with her and just spend time. I talked to her, told her I loved her, and that she got to pick out my next tattoo. I wasn't there long, but it was a visit full of love. Sadly, Ashley passed away on November 12th, 2013. After her memorial, I went and got Freddy Krueger tattooed on my leg, a tattoo I also share with Blaine. And both Jen and Ashley's mom were there when I got it. A reminder of her always, and I know she would have gotten a laugh, that I will always carry her favorite slasher around with me forever. I miss her dearly, love her more, and she has always continued to be my favorite nightmare. Blaine. Holy hell, where do I start? After he graduated from high school, Blaine and I would see just a little bit of each other from time to time, and into college, I would see him around our college campus. We didn't hang out as much, we were a little busy, but after Sarah died, he and I became inseparable again. He stayed at my house for like 3 straight days, leaving only to change clothes and, I'm hoping, shower, and alongside Meg and Putman, he was the constant in that space with nearly no break. We would hang out weekly, maybe even multiple times a week, but one thing that became routine was inviting him and Putman over for Monday night wrestling nights. We would sit around and eat pizza and watch wrestling, joking with each other and playing video games for a while before. It was just a time for us to be brothers. We talked tattoos and wrestling ideas, movie plans, or just joked around with each other. Assorted friends or girlfriends would come if they were invited, and it was a weekly time for he and I and my parents to see each other. Blaine would go into learning makeup techniques, both stage and movie. A lot of this was self-taught for a long time, and I dove into filmmaking. He would act and do makeup and help operate the camera or with script ideas. We made several movies together, and all the while standing around going, "Can you believe this shit?" As we did so. Alongside Putman, we made our own independent film company because it meant more time to hang out with each other. Every film I've ever made, he was involved in one way or another. Another chronicling of our friendship throughout the years. When Blaine got married, he asked me to be his best man. We'd made this pact in high school, and when the time came, we'd stand beside each other. Standing beside him on that day was a great honor and a lot of fun. When he and his wife moved to Pittsburgh, we'd keep in touch by social media, and anytime he came back to visit, we would find a time to hang out, never missing a beat. My dad said of us, it was the measure of true friendship and brotherhood, that no matter the miles or time between us, we picked up every time like nothing had ever changed. When I got married, he returned the favor as my best man. We stayed up the night before, watching horror movies and wrestling, talking about adventures past. As we waited for the wedding, we set up a camera to record it. A picture of which my mom took, further proving that our movie-making days and tech crew times were never far from our hearts. Blaine and I share several tattoos, because we are, at the core of everything, brothers and best friends. We share Sarah's squirrel, Ashley's Freddy, an Omega symbol, and Simba for Ewan, Tammy's son. I don't even think we're done yet. We just haven't talked about what's next. The thing is, I'm always happy to get more. We've gone to horror conventions together, meeting film legends whose movies continue to influence what we love to create together. In 2008, we met George Romero and a few of the surviving cast from the original Night of the Living Dead. Blaine was in full zombie makeup. The group photo op of that is one of my most treasured photographs. It was the movie that changed my life and the people involved in it, alongside me, and the man who also changed how my high school life and beyond would end up. After a few years apart, in 2022, Blaine moved back to Arizona, shortly followed by Tammy. My brother and sister being back in the same spot after so long is really great. Aside from our confrontation in high school, my sophomore year, the amount of actual arguments Blaine and I have ever had can be counted on one hand. Even if we do, it ends quickly with a, do we really want to fight about this? No fucker we don't, and we agree to drop it. Nothing has ever been worth us getting that angry with one another. I can never, ever repay him for taking a chance and making a friend out of a shy freshman. We're older, but we are still goofy. And even if only in our minds, we're still one hell of a very good-looking baritone duo. The boss, Wendy. I wanted to put this in here because as I tackled this book and continued to reach out to people or make connections in 2023, Wendy and I connected on Facebook. She was still a choir director. She was still in the state. And in May of 2023, Blaine, Zane, and I showed up at their Pops concert. I figured maybe we might look familiar. It had been 20 years, but even to just say hi would make it worth it. Maybe she might remember us, some of her previous students, even if she didn't remember exactly who we were. Before the intermission, the Choir Boosters co-chair had been asking for donations and that he and Wendy would be happy to discuss details of the stage during the break. So we made our way down. As Wendy sat on the edge of the stage, I addressed her the only way I ever could. Hey, boss, can broken down old choir guys donate too? I asked. She looked at us, and in a second, she realized who we were. Oh my God, she exclaimed, and jumped off the stage and hugged me. And not like a side hug or a polite hug. She tackle hugged me with a bear hug. Oh my God, what? And then she looked at Zan. No way, and she hugged him. Blaine took a second until he put his sunglasses on, and then she recognized him, and she gave him a hug too. My guys, what are you doing here? She asked. The guys told her I'd seen her Facebook post about the concert, and put together us coming, and she proceeded to explain to anyone around her who we were. Her first choir and her tech guys. She introduced us to her daughter, and we snapped a photo, and she asked one of the boosters to do one for her too. We said we'd be back after the concert and went back to our seats, enjoying the rest of the talented choir she directed. Once a choir kid, always a choir kid. At the end of the concert, Blaine had to leave, but Zan and I went back to talk to Wendy, and her mom and dad had come to the concert. She introduced us and explained who we were, and we got to talking. We shared photos of our kids. She explained how much she liked my parents, how my mom had set up caroling at the hospital, and how it was always one of the things that she found touching. I told her of me writing the book and that I had photos and concerts. She asked what we were up to, and I told her I'd gone into education, spending, at that time, 12 years teaching as a teacher, but 17 total, and counting, in higher ed. You became a teacher, she asked. I looked at her and her parents. I told you I would, and I did. You were the best teacher I ever had. I went into teaching because of you. It is sort of hard to keep emotions in check at that point, and I looked at her parents. The last time I saw her was 20 years ago at my sister's memorial, I said. Oh, Sarah, Wendy said. And we sang. You and I sang together. And she remembered us singing together and the choir, and how she at first was not sure she would direct us because she didn't want to step on the toes of the new school director. But when I asked and she knew I wanted her to be there, she wasn't going to say no. I explained no one else would direct us but her, and then I'd found the video of it. You have to send it to me, she said, and I agreed. Anytime you guys want to come visit, you come visit me, please. We could talk for hours. I got a chance to tell Wendy what she meant to me, what she inspired in me, and thanked her for everything. And it went better than I thought it would, and it didn't feel like a teacher-student reunion at all. She hugged me like she hugged a missed friend. In November 2023, I came out of retirement and joined a community choir she was directing, along with Xandar, Diana, and Katie, for a holiday concert at her high school. I'd only do it for her. She's still the boss. I'm still the kid. Diana. Lady Diana has continued to be the patron saint of this 15-year-old dork, no matter how old I get. When we reconnected via social media many years ago, it would be commonplace for her and I to message and say hi to each other. We would share stories about our kids, touch base about memories, and wish each other happy birthday. We would talk about politics, religion, what is going on in the world, and she was always an example, a wonderful one at that, of love. A few years ago, after Pam and I saw each other, when she invited me to one of her son's birthdays, the idea of getting a choir reunion of sorts together for karaoke was formed. That night, I was nervous about going, not knowing who would be there. To my wife's urging of go have fun, I did. When I arrived, Xandar and I had arrived at the same time, and he brought along Gabby. When Xandar walked in first, he was immediately hugged, and as he stepped to the side, there was Diana. It was the first time I'd truly seen her since the movie day, and she let out a bit of a giggle and cried, and I gave her the biggest hug I could muster. The entire night, her husband Zach, Zan, and I would talk. Sure, there were other people there, and I loved seeing them, but seeing Diana meant the world to me. That inner 15-year-old reminded me why I loved those mornings with her. We'd continue to talk online, and shortly thereafter a movement was made to reunite the choir for a surprise reunion with Mr. Ludwig. Diana asked me to be there, so I was. And I brought the goddamn sailor hat with me. It was an absolutely memorable experience for everyone to pull off the surprise for Mr. Ludwig, and it was wonderful to dust off a bit of that old choir sound. Uncovering all of the choir stuff, Diana was the first person I thought about sharing it with, because she was the absolute beating heart of that choir. She was amazingly talented, probably the most talented in Downbeat, and I have such warm memories of that 1 year with her. Music is such an important part of our friendship. We communicate in lyrics, send each other songs, and as fun little things, I'll send her a video or two of me singing to her from my car. These car concerts now continue because it continues to be music between us that is the great communicator. When I began to write this book, Diana offered to be my editor because it is what she did as a profession. She's been with me through every step of this process, from outlines to watching me put together the playlist. She's read every draft, sending back when she can bits and pieces, with both editors' comments and commentary on the adventures she got to see and those she didn't. We do video chats and meet for brunch to catch up, and her investment in this is what kept the creative fire burning. I have many reasons to be grateful for her friendship and her being in my life for over 25 years. She's still the purest heart I know. A brilliant lighthouse and guiding light for a dorky sailor. Emily. When it comes to people so important to me in high school, it is without a doubt that Emily was one of the first and one of the most influential. In all of the angst of high school and writing this book, bearing my high school experience and stories, I was asked by Diana at one point about different milestones I had in high school. Emily was my first love. But her and my friendship was never defined by a guy crushing on a girl. We were so much more. We could definitely fight at times, as spirited friends do, but most of the time it seemed to come from a place of looking out for one another. We'd even joke about it because we knew, no matter what, we always came back around to exchanging smiles or a hug or a note or a movie day. We were just good together through everything put in front of us. Choir, teen drama, fights, classes, or laughs. At the end of it, no matter how weird things could get, we always knew we could call on each other and the other would be there in an instant. That day after Sarah died, when she and Kate arrived at my house, it was her arrival that I think hit my dad in the gut and always sticks in my mind. When he did get that hug from her, I could also tell it was the one he probably needed the most. I've told Emily she's probably in my parents' will because of how much they adore her. Which is why it does pain me and my heart to say that once high school was over and after Sarah's death, we just drifted apart. There was no fight or disagreement. We didn't have a falling out. We got busy with school, work, life, whatever it was. We'd message and say hi once in a while. Again, social media is great for that. But there was never another MST3K day, or a movie day, or a singing day. There was no good luck with everything, see you when I see you. Not because we didn't want to, it's just you don't know when the last is the last until it is. Which is why, also, walking down that football field, her and me at graduation is fitting and always so memorable to me. We ended something together, knowing it was the end. We've exchanged messages, of course, through the years, and a notebook We've exchanged messages, of course, through the years, but once this project and the introspection started, and that box full of notes and letters, and a notebook we passed back and forth in high school with some angsty conversations then came about. And the pictures. I messaged her, and her family were in Taiwan, and we would message back and forth about the kids. She would share photos of their living there, and we shared videos of our kids just being goofy. I shared with her the song lyrics and Valentine's Day poem she wrote me that I still kept, and we laughed at the angst and drama of teenage years, but loved the friendship that to this day continues from it. She brought up the idea that when she moved back, we would get us all together, maybe try and get the parents included. She wanted to meet my wife and children and wanted me to meet her husband and kids. We knew we wanted to do some play dates. We're friends. Why not our kids? She was the first person I asked permission from to put pictures in the book. And also at times while writing it, I did feel a bit of that teenage nerves kick up in my brain, saying, I hope Emily likes the book. Not in some weird way, just that my story and my time there could not have been nearly as enjoyable or important without her in it. Or how she saved my life with a song. In late 2022, we made sure our last picture wasn't. We met for lunch and picked up right where we left off, with stories, plans to hang out, laughs, and a lot of love. Our kids get along great. So do the adults. And if she ever needs me, a denim knight will still answer the call of a queen. Always. Jessica. Jessica and I were robbed of time and adventures together, and I will 100% stand by that forever. Looking back at how very inseparable we were when not in school that freshman year, it would be very interesting in some alternate timeline to see where we would have ended up had she stayed. But alas. Jessica and I have stayed in contact on and off ever since. We would spend time back in the day on Instant Messenger, and I would watch her own adventures online. We both went into education a bit, so now we like to discuss what that's like and what we run into when we teach students. Years ago, she posted photos she found in a scrapbook from high school and made sure to tag me. There I was, in a blue tank top, my bowl cut, and a grin, and I could instantly remember it. It was a day of us running around at the pool of the apartment complex. She had photos from coronation and her date. And I could see, even years later, she had one of the pictures of me and Emily I gave her in there. In 2017, I slipped and fell and broke my left kneecap. Posting pictures of the injury online, Jessica was one of the first people to comment. However, she also immediately messaged me on Facebook and checked on me. For about a week or so, as I was up late and getting ready for surgery, she'd call just to check on me. After surgery, more calls. She told me what to expect from physical therapy. We cut jokes, and she said now we had something more in common: knee scars. During that time, a storm hit Florida where she was living, and on the drive back to her house, she called. She saw I was online, and she said she knew if there'd be a person she could count on to talk to and be along with her for the ride in the dark during a storm, it was me. We will still comment or chat to each other through social media and have made a few calls or videos from time to time to catch up and say hi. And when I was in the first days of writing this book for her birthday, I sent her the combined writings of her story. A bit of a present and a way to show her that I wouldn't let words fail me this time. I loved her, and she truly was the best buddy and friend I had that year. And I never forgot her or the laughs we shared. And I can never, ever think of the works of Edgar Allan Poe without thinking of her and her overdramatic laugh. Katie. I need to be very clear when it comes to Katie. I have absolutely no hard feelings for her whatsoever. Katie was a source of a lot of learning for me, and no matter what 15-year-old me may think, I'm very grateful for it. All of it. When everything with Blaine was over, she and I still got along, and even when she graduated, it was not unheard of for her to come by and visit me, or for us to go out for drives and catch up. I'm not a fan of country music, but anytime it plays and I listen to it, I think of her, because that was almost all we ever listened to together. Katie and my paths would cross from time to time over the years. We'd just touch base and hang out, and one of the funniest memories I have, though not tied to high school, was her and Pam's reaction to me at Pam's wedding. While walking back from the bar, they caught eyes with me and saw me drinking, and I can remember Katie's surprised face as she called out, "Maddie, what are you doing?" "I'm 21 now and I'm drinking," I responded, and I could see it register on both of their faces that yes, the 15-year-old sophomore they remembered me as had indeed gotten a bit older, and Katie mentioned that when we danced. 2 weeks later, the three of us went out because they wanted to properly celebrate me turning 21. When we got together to do the reunion for Mr. Ludwig, it was a lot of fun to catch up with Katie and sing together, and we even did a karaoke night together, sharing laughs and stories of our kids as we did so. When we reunited with Wendy to do a choir concert, Wendy gave her and me a duet, and we took the stage together, singing, still a bit of partners in crime. There is no doubt in my mind that she left a lasting impact on me, and even now, I can always smile about it. Kate. Kate has always been a bit of an enigma for me. She's so talented and smart, and when I first met her, she just bowled me over with her confidence. I remember to this day when fielding the fact I told her I had a bit of a crush on her, and she had other guys who crushed on her too. She smiled as she proclaimed, "Everybody wants me," with that freshman, just absolute self-esteem. She has this sense of humor and wit that can also cut, but also can give way to deep conversations. I found myself protective of her at times, which also may have led to some of our disagreements, but at the same time, just mystified by her. She also seemed to be a good foil to me. Not a feud, but something that bore a bit of humorous sparring. She'd keep me on my toes. She was never letting me get too much of an ego, but also never allowing me to be overly self-deprecating. When high school was over and after Sarah's death, we lost touch for a while. However, thanks to Blaine running into her, we reunited when I began making a zombie movie. Hearing that I was filming one, she sent me a message asking if she could be involved, and she was up for anything. So we decided that she could play a victim, and we had her stomach torn out and eaten. She attacked the small part with gusto, playing a fantastic screaming victim as Zombie Putman and a few others tore the latex from her stomach, eating the contents. A blood-covered Kate is then all smiles with Blaine, Putman, Tammy, Meg, and I in a behind-the-scenes photo. We would go in and out of contact for over the years, running into each other at Meg's graduation party where Xandar and Dan were joining us as well. We then meet up at our 10-year reunion where she and Dan, now married, were awaiting the birth of one of their children. And we all stood around and laughing that they had both been involved in the making of one of my zombie movies. But not the same one. We still message from time to time, talking about kids and educational journeys as we both work for colleges. And I know she's still absolutely freakingly brilliant. And every time I hear Love Shack and Tin Roof Rusted, all I can do is hear her voice. Meg. Meg and I have maintained a friendship with each other ever since the end of high school, and it really continued and strengthened after Sarah's death and into our college years. We would do dinner, call or hang out about once a week, once every other week. In a time where it felt like the Brother Corps and Tammy were scattered in the winds, and I was just going through the motions or a routine at times, there was Meg, with her, "Hey Matt," that to this day makes me smile. We also kept going to concerts. We went to see Def Leppard and Bryan Adams together at a ballpark and danced to Pour Some Sugar on Me. We had dinner and watched Bruce Hornsby and then went back to my apartment to play old Nintendo games and talk late into the night. And when Bon Jovi came to Glendale in 2006, she was the only person I considered taking. That 4-hour concert, to this day, is still probably one of my favorite top concert experiences ever, and we got to share it together while scream singing Living on a Prayer. She got into the Society for Creative Anachronism and would invite me to meetings or camping events, and I would love to see what had captured her eye. I'm not a camper, but some of those events are memories I look back on with a lot of affection. My 21st birthday was me and her and Blaine having drinks and catching up. While I continued to work for Fry's, she made a homemade Veruca Salt costume to complement my Willy Wonka for a Halloween event, and she helped play games and hand out candy to kids. And for years, when we commemorated Sarah's death on December 2nd, she would be there. We continued to have adventures together. We made a late-night trip to Tucson, getting home right around 4 or 5 in the morning. We drank and shared stories together at a camping event in Flagstaff that I had to leave at 4 in the morning the next day so I could get to work. After not having all the supplies for a tent at a campout, we crashed at a hotel across the street from a prison. She would help me with my writing, come over and visit with my parents, and do movie nights. She even became a character in my wrestling universe, a kick-ass ally to my wrestling persona. Meg played the part of a reporter in 2 of my movies and even helped operate the camera and do behind-the-scenes work with me on 2 more. Her and I survived to the end of Striking Back, and recording in a garage surrounded by 30 zombified extras banging on the windows and doors was one of the coolest nerd bucket list things high school me could have ever hoped for. She helped me interview all the extras and showed up on New Year's Eve going into 2005 to film the final scene. In the movie she helped with, those filming days were filled with me getting hit in the head with props or bottles or her busting out laughing. There's a raw, uncut tape of just her and I trying to record 1 minute of her scene, and instead it is just dozens and dozens of outtakes and jokes and conversations. It's one of my favorite memories just ever. She always remained one of my closest friends and people I trusted. We never dated each other after high school. Now, I admittedly held a romantic torch for her for years because of how important she was to me in high school, the night Sarah died, and beyond. As time went on, that love changed, and our love for each other, regardless of the form that it took, was something we were always honest with each other about. And I like to believe we still are. When she graduated from ASU, she asked me to be at her graduation party, and her family and I sat and talked, and I was one of the last to leave, enjoying spending my time with them all. I still to this day, have a lot of love for her family. When my wife and I got married, I asked Meg to be there, and it was the first time they had met, 2 of the most important women I'd ever known. Meg sat in the row behind my parents. I saw her as part of the family, and it always meant a lot to me. One of my favorite photos from our reception is a photo of her and me and Blaine and Gabby all together, and another of us talking with my dad. The next week, we had breakfast together. The last time of this writing, we would see each other. She told me she was pregnant with her first daughter. Meg was one of the first people to reach out when we announced my wife was pregnant with our first daughter. She was the first person to call me and congratulate me when both of my girls were born. I've always been proud and honored to be her friend, and I'll always have her back if she ever needs me. I am so thankful. She taught me what it was like and what it meant to be loved in return. She saved me after Sarah's death, and she didn't even know it. And I know, in a heartbeat, when we get a chance to talk, we pick up with a laugh and a lot of love. Because that's what friendship's about, right? Sure is. Faithfully. Pam. In high school, some of my journals were about how cool I thought Pam was. And she absolutely still is. I adore Pam. And her and my sense of humor at times has gelled so well that we have been countless times, all we have to do is give each other a look, and all that says is, "Are you believing this shit?" And we burst out laughing because we know what the other is thinking. Pam would send me Christmas cards and letters after college, and once she got married and beyond, and she asked me to be at her wedding, which I was beyond humbled to be invited to. And getting to see her when I get to see her means so much. Especially when her and her family moved back to the Phoenix area. She humbled me again when she invited me and my family to a few of her son's birthday parties. It was also here that we talked about choir in high school, and we put the idea together of a karaoke night, a bit of a reunion to anyone who wanted to come. And the cool thing was, people did. Jen, Kay, Pam, myself, Kate, Xandar, Diana, Brandon A, Jessica F, Becky, Katie, and Andrea would come to the couple of karaoke nights we had that we would try and plan. She was also instrumental in getting people together for Ludwig's surprise, still showing a bit of that choir president leadership. She still lives in the valley. We do still try to have lunch together. And yes, we still do try and plan karaoke nights because, as I said before, once a choir kid, always a choir kid. And she's still really, really cool. And I think I owe her a song from the last time we did karaoke night. Putman. After Sarah's death and some troubles with his mom and stepdad, Putman moved in with me and my folks for about a year and a half when we moved to Mesa. With a live-in brother and friend, we had a lot of fun. Reading comics, doing wrestling stuff, horror movies, and video games. We made several memories riding around in that Ford Escort that I had, driving around town and blaring Kiri by Mr. Mister and singing, playing air guitar and drumming. We flew down the street with a gaming table strapped to the top of the car with nothing but jumper cables and hope. When I started to plan on making movies, Putman began learning editing software to help, and we were an amazing team. I bounced off movie ideas. We created horror movie villains while watching slasher films. When we added Blaine for Monday Night Wrestling, the hangouts were filled with building the WFA and more Japanese deathmatch wrestling. We were together for group outings to horror movies or parties, huge Halloween trick-or-treating groups, and the family bond was strong. We were Matt and Putman, Kid Cage and Pogo in every sense of the word. Putman would get married, and it just happened that it was someone who I didn't very see eye to eye with. We kept things civil, and when his daughter Emily was born, I was one of the first people he called, and there's a photo of me and him and Blaine all in the hospital with her. Shortly thereafter, though, sadly, things started to get a bit sour. Putman and I wouldn't talk for years. At least not to each other. And in the channels we did talk, it was a lot of shit talking. We were hesitant to acknowledge each other, much less consider ourselves friends, and it felt like the crash course was coming. I told him the next time I saw him I'd take the squirrel tattoo for Sarah off of him with a cheese grater. We knew if we were ever in the same vicinity as each other, it was going to be a fight. Not a one punch, let's get a beer kind, but a street fight where we knew we were going to get hurt. And we were going to hurt the other person. But life had other plans. On the day I went to visit Ashley in the hospital, when I walked into the waiting room with my wife and my oldest daughter, who was only about 9 months old at the time, Putman was there too. There were civil hellos, and then Putman asked to go for a walk. I nodded, and we stepped out of the room and to the elevator. Before we hit the button, cleared his throat. I'm sorry, he said, and I paused at the elevator button. A lot has happened, a lot bad, but we shouldn't have gotten where we are, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry too, I said. We shook hands and hugged, and that was it. We went to Ashley's room together. We stood side by side with each other at her memorial. And for years after that, Thursdays were his and my hangout days. Sometimes Zan would join us, and the three of us would war game and trade jokes and comments, but every Thursday, like clockwork, Putman and I would hang out. He is my girl's Uncle Putman, and he also shares the same Omega tattoo as me and Blaine. He's moved to Colorado and back, and we chat frequently online about everything we can think of, and he is still absolutely my brother. Blaine and I may have been the goof troop. Zan and I may have always been the knights. Putman and I have always been the fighters. It's why when I hear this lyric from the rock band Dragon Force, I always think of him, of Pogo, and the warriors who live forever. Fight on to the end. Tammy. After Blaine graduated, Tammy and her mom moved, and we no longer got to see her at Mountain Point. But she was always still hanging around us. My little sister type person. She came to several of the Mountain Point dances, escorted by Xandar, and I would of course make sure to get a dance with her. One of the things about her and I is we also share a very crude sense of humor with each other. There might be some underlying thing there, I say with a bit of a grin. We've even enjoyed giving Blaine a near heart attack at a New Year's party for 2003 when we kissed at midnight. She was a victim in one of my movies, and a kick-ass zombie killer in another. Anytime I think of a movie or story idea, there's Tammy to ask, what can I do? And her ear-piercing scream as she got mobbed by zombies echoes in my brain all these years later. She is the mother of 3 of my nieces who I absolutely adore and love to poke fun at her as they do things that remind me of her in her teenage years. And she realizes how screwed she is. She's also the mother of my angelic nephew, Ewan, who passed away sadly on March 5th, 2015, before turning 4 months old. We share a tattoo of the Simba cave painting from The Lion King, along with Blaine and my mom in his memory. And I wear it with honor and share his name every chance I get. I flew out to see her in North Carolina shortly after his death and before her other 2 daughters were born. And those days of sharing hugs and stories and tears, laughter and drinks are ingrained in my brain as some of the most important days I have ever had. Not just with her, but period. She is tough, hilarious, passionate, and a pain in the ass, but I love her dearly. Making her laugh or go, ew, is one of my favorite goals in life because I know she will find a way to match it right back. And that is something she and I have always shared. We just don't have a filter around each other. She doesn't need me to be, but I am fiercely protective of her, even to this day. The brother core has always been insanely important. But Tammy has probably always been my favorite. Sorry, guys. Xandar. To this day, the amount of times Xandar and I have ever fought is somewhere between like 0 and 1. And I'm more inclined to think it's 0. Part of that is because when he and I became friends, our brotherhood was forged immediately out of respect and love. Diana once said of us it was instantaneous to see we were nearly the same type of person, but that also being around each other made us better. He is intelligent and tactical beyond measure, always engaged in wanting what is the best for people. And if you ever need anything, he is there in the drop of a hat. He is talented and creative, and acts in all he does with love and devotion. I love his opinion and his insights, and I love picking his brain. There were some times in the early 2000s after high school that for whatever reason we didn't just see each other that much. And I'll always wish for that time back and for more time to hang out with him. Which is why when he moved back to into the Phoenix area after his military service, I was so excited because it meant more time to spend with him and introducing him to my wife and my girls. My girls adore their Uncle Zan. Xandar and Gabby dated a bit after high school, and then they went their separate ways romantically, but always remained friends. A short few years ago, they finally began dating again, and much to our group's excitement and cheers, they are a lovingly wonderful, complementary force that to everyone, it just made perfect sense. Zan asked me to be the best man at his wedding before he proposed to Gabby, and standing next to him on that day where my oldest daughter was their flower girl and my parents performed the ceremony flooded my heart with love. Now that their daughter, another niece of mine, is in the family, all of the Stars family kids are beginning to know each other, grow up with each other, and this has been a goal of Zan and mine for years. Anytime I start to put something together, he's the first person I call. Xandar is the most honorable man I've ever met. The world has been so enriched by him, and my life has been made infinitely better by having him in it. From early mornings before a downbeat he didn't have to be there for, to late night gaming sessions now. He goes beyond just being best friend or brother to me. He's my hero. Stars. It was important to me that I spoke about each one individually, but I'll be damned if I won't talk about us as a whole. And I have to start with first another tip of dedication to David. After high school, David, Xandar, and I would still hang out from time to time, but much like other friendships, after a while, distance in life would start to get in the way of hanging out. And after going radio silent for a while, I stopped hearing from David. I didn't know until years later, through Xandar, when he returned from military service, that David had taken his own life. We, as a whole group, didn't learn this until after Ashley's passing, and it broke our hearts. And of course it leads to the fact that losing contact with him is absolutely a regret. He was such a great part of my memories of high school and a few years after, and to this day, anytime I hear Stand By Me, all I can do is think of him. Since moving, much like Adrian, I have not had a chance to see Jeremy. Doesn't mean I wouldn't love to see him. Much like Jessica and Adrian, I feel like we were robbed of great adventures in high school and beyond, had he gotten a chance to stay. And then, there is the fuckery that is the five of us. When the original family began, it was Blaine, Tammy, and I. That trio was instantly added to by Xandar, and then about a half a year later, Putman joined as well. Like all families, we may go quite some time without all being in the same area, and for years that is exactly what would happen. 3 of us might be living in Arizona while 2 wouldn't. Or maybe 4. Or, weirdly, maybe just me for a while. And so trying to get us all together would sometimes feel like it would take a higher power to do so. When Blaine got married, Tammy couldn't be there because she was giving birth to her daughter. When I got married, Tammy, Zan, and Putman weren't able to be there. When Zan and Gabby got married, Tammy couldn't be there. Sadly, Blaine and Tammy's mom, Beth, who I always considered my second mom, passed away, and it was right in the midst of COVID, so we couldn't be together for that either. It was those kind of things. And then, something happened. Blaine and his wife Carissa moved back to the valley. Tammy would head back too with her daughters. Putman would move back from Colorado, and the pandemic began to lift. In early 2022, Blaine and Carissa, Tammy and her girls, and me, my wife, and my girls all went to the local Renaissance Festival. Then, when Xandar graduated with his master's degree and Gabby wanted to surprise him with dinner, Blaine, Tammy, and I were there. It was also here where I discussed how I'd been reaching out to people written about in this book, and we acknowledged Putman not being there. How it had been years since we'd all been in one place. We knew it would happen, but it was taking time. There it is, again. That pesky time. And I was in a fighting mood. So after having lunches and brunches and video calls and chats and everything under the sun, usually just me and one other person, I put together a barbecue. The invites went out, directions were simple. Bring the kids, the spouses, bring whatever else, but I'll hope to see you there. My wife and oldest daughter were not feeling well, so it was my youngest and I, a Ramada rented and a playground ready. So while my daughter ran off to the playground, and I started setting up, my parents came. My phone went off, and it was Tammy trying to figure out where I was. As I came over the hill, she told her girls to run to their Uncle Matt, and then she squealed because she ran right into Emily and her kids, whose husband had to work but wanted to make the next one. I turned to my left and smiled because Diana and Zach came. We hugged, and as we did, Putman and his kids arrived, and Xandar opened the door to the car to my right. Blaine showed up 15 minutes later. Gabby brought with her her and Zan's daughter almost right after that. And our kids, from less than a year old to teenage years, all played together and climbed trees, and we hung out. I snapped photos, and Emily shouted with joy to see my parents, and they gave each other hugs. Diana, Tammy, and I did a redo of our photo together from my sophomore year, the only one I had of the two of them for so long. All of us guys stood around the grill, making the others nervous, as Putman, Xandar, and I continued to add lighter fluid to it. Tammy brought drinks, so Blaine drank Dr. Pepper, and I drank A&W root beer. My daughter and Emily's son swung on a 2-seat swing together while she and I watched, her daughter holding each of our fingers while she walked. Everyone trading off, holding younger kids as the other kids ran around, my daughter looking at me and asking, "These are all my cousins? And aunts and uncles?" "Yeah, kiddo, they are," I replied. Kids got nearly unlimited snacks, and everyone got a chance to talk and catch up. It'd been long, too long, but we picked up right where we left off like time never mattered. The larger group of us took a photo, both a nice one and a funny, goofy throwback to the old choir tour picture ones. And it was great. And the people that were missing, we were damn sure we wanted to have at one of the next ones. We try to meet once a month or so, and we all want to do more hangouts. So I try and plan those too. It was good for the soul. And for the first time in nearly 16 years, that fivesome of us, stars, were together in one place at the same time. When we're together, there's nothing we can't do. Fuck you, time. We win this one. Like a thief in the night, when you can't get enough, I am willing to fight, 'cause I'm a soldier of love. And then there's me. And you might think, after everything I've put you all through already, There's a point where you can all say, fucking hell, are you done yet? Not quite. After Sarah's death, I had a lot of conflicting feelings and emotions. I didn't have a good breakdown or a processing of what happened for nearly 8 weeks. Reading the police report and eyewitness statements is what did it. I was fueled by anger and vengeance, of regret and remorse, and in a lot of ways, I felt like I competed with Sarah's ghost for years. After her death, what I wanted to do was go on a road trip and give myself time to grieve, to write, and to listen to music. I just needed to be away for a little while. To take a road trip, write a zombie movie, and just not be here. I didn't get to process it how I wanted, so it took me a lot of time to get refocused on things, and I struggled with school and getting out of my room or apartment. I settled into routines where I would just want to spend time alone, not to be bothered, and also not really cared about what people wanted me to do. But I did begin to go down a few different roads and adventures in my life, and a lot of it is thanks to and included some pretty damn familiar faces. A few weeks after Sarah's death, I got my first video camera. A joke movie idea I had pitched to Sarah, Brian, and Putman became a project, and in December 2003 and January 2004, Pumpkill Invasion of the Homicidal Pumpkins was filmed. A dumb movie, it has become a little bit of a piece of our group's inside jokes with each other. We want to make a sequel. In 2004, I made Striking Back a reality. Derek Stryker would be forever immortalized, I've always wanted to say that, in a film when Blaine played him. Since Corey was unavailable, Jen, my girlfriend at the time, played Autumn, and Putman and Tammy were included as well. Meg joined as a reporter who, when attacked by a zombie, is saved by a certain jean jacket and crowbar wielding cameo. The movie checking off a bucket list my dream of making a zombie movie someday. It wouldn't be my last. 80s music is still very important to me and my life. I've seen Bon Jovi, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Bruce Springsteen, Weird Al, Cyndi Lauper, Meatloaf, Styx, Lou Gramm, Jackson Browne, Bruce Hornsby, Loverboy, Def Leppard, Bryan Adams, Pat Benatar, John Waite, Journey. And in his farewell tour, I got to see Elton John. Oh, and of course, I've seen REO Speedwagon quite a few times too. I've been a college instructor, teaching at the same school as my dad. I have built class curriculum with my mom. I still work in education, at this time working with, of all things, high school students who wish to take college credit while in high school. There's something about being on a high school campus and walking and talking with teenagers that makes things so much fun. Seeing people in the midst of their own angst and figuring things out, but also keeping an eye on the future. It is inspiring and entertaining, and I love to have a hand in it. It has also sent me back to Mountain Point. I have continued my own little wrestling universe. I have used it to do everything from create friend-inspired wrestlers to work out my feelings of Sarah's death to just create a 20-plus year running creative story. Also, I had the opportunity to perform in a professional wrestling match. Bucket list check. In February 2022, after 20 years of writing matches for Kid Cage, I finally ended his long-running feud with Bloodstar. A bloody street fight, but it's how it needed to end it. I retired Cage for a little while after that. Not long, but a little while. And it felt weird that for a bit, that heroic never say die version of me would finally be given some time off. But for everything he did for me, I think he deserved it. I have continued to struggle with depression and sadness. I have my moments where it's hard to fight off, but I work hard to funnel those feelings creatively to deal with them. To anyone who ever battles those, I wish them peace and the strength to reach out and to ask for help or just a listening ear. It is tough, but I wish the best for you. I have remained clean of cutting since March 22nd, 2002. But it is my daily fight. Instead of cutting, I get tattoos. I have tattoos that are, in whole or in part, a dedication to many of the people in this book. I wear my love on my sleeve, both figuratively and literally. I still love to sing. I sing to my kiddos and record dorky videos from time to time. I sing when I teach and I sing at work. If a karaoke night gets planned, I love to be there. I love to take requests. And maybe, someday, I'll even sing an REO Speedwagon song live to an audience other than that damn lamppost. I really do miss that fucking window, though. I met a wonderful young woman in 2007, Amelia, and we began dating. She's also who was instrumental in getting my brain right when it came to my education and my completion of everything I have done since then. A bachelor's degree and 2 masters is all credit to her. We got married in 2011, and she continues to challenge me, support me, and push me to be the best I can be, and I love her for it daily. Our daughters, Aurelia and Cora, were born in 2013 and 2015. The sunshine of my life and the moon of my world. The first songs played on the radio in the hospital right after both were born were REO Speedwagon songs. I have found so much growth and happiness in being Amelia's husband and Aurelia and Cora's dad, and the love and adventures we have. Those make for a fantastic story as well. One that I enjoy writing every day. And I still absolutely love to write. So, who'd want to read a memoir of some weird, dorky kid from a Phoenix high school? Maybe more than I thought when I started this project. And if not, the hope is that the people who do read it, that admittedly target audience, gets a smile or laugh out of it. For the record, I still am a nerd, a wannabe hero, petty, creative, naive, selfish, obsessive, a choir guy, a writer, a friend, a brother, a preacher's kid ×2 who is stuck in a relationship with the music and movies and nostalgia of the 1980s. And also an absolute hopeless romantic who leads with his heart more than his head most of the time. At the end of it all, this is what is important to me when it comes to this story, my story. And that's just telling people how much I've loved them. That we may go through life never knowing the impact we have on people, and maybe it would do some good to put out in the world some of that. How these one-time strangers have become so integral to my story, and it couldn't have happened without love. I am not me without them. We all have our dark times, some still do, and I think that's what we all need to remember. And what 17-year-old me, cutting himself in the dark, struggled to know. So let's just keep this in mind. Somebody, somewhere, loves the absolute fucking shit out of you. So please, tell your story. As wild as it might sound, don't be shy about telling people you love them, that you are here for them, how they made your life better. Do it without wishing for something in return, other than knowing you've made them know how important they have been. Keep those relationships open and be proud of it. I don't write romance. But thanks to these people I've met and been honored to call friends and family, I've been able to write one hell of a love story. Finally, while time can be short, we just need to remember to fill it with the love and laughs and hearts we know and love. We sing our songs and we tell our stories and we share our jokes. And we always look back and know in the back of our heads, but in the front of our hearts, remember those who embodied for us the most truthful thing they could have ever given us. That they meant every word they said. When they said they loved us, they meant they loved us forever. Because I know I sure as hell did. I love you too. My love is a rock, an immovable force. Anywhere that you are, my love is right here. With any tick of the clock, life can change its course. But my love will not. My love is a rock. My Love is a Rock by REO Speedwagon.